This is Leadership Beyond, your community of conversation. Well, hello there, community of conversation. We are so happy that you're joining us today because we are here to share some early findings of our ongoing research project around leadership resilience and some connections that we've been making from some other surveys that have come out recently. And so the messages that we're getting are starting to become clearer and clearer about what is really going on with leaders today.
And the purpose of this call is it's in the early stages after the launch, just to check in with the community, because one of the premises that led to this is the realization that we are pulled in so many directions. And part of the validation is we have several people who we know, like, and trust who will do the research, but they haven't even had time to really make space because this is a self-evaluation. And we say we don't want to squeeze it in between meetings. We want to sit down and evaluate our leadership situation. So on this call, we want to tell you we're seeing lots of interesting things to address. And we're also inviting you, if you haven't participated in the survey, we really would like your voice in the mix.
Yeah, that's very true. Good plug there, Tom, because what we are hearing is that the participants are saying things like, wow, that really helped me to understand more about the places that I'm not able to give energy to and the priorities that in my mind I want to be prioritizing, but am not able to for one reason or another. And it's starting to provide them with some clarity on where they can make some small changes to better address the things that they want to be able to address to be their best version of leaders and how they envision that. And so it's well worth, we know, we appreciate that it's 20 plus minutes, but we are finding that if you are dedicating any development time in your day for yourself or reflection time for yourself, that this we're hearing is worth that time. So if you've already captured some of that time on your calendar, we encourage you to stick to it, and we encourage you to take a spin through this self-evaluation.
And for those of you who aren't familiar, we have a research page where you can find more information. But the way it's structured, the research is structured, is twofold. It takes specific activities that leaders are engaged in and measures our tension around those activities. And the second thing there is an opportunity for what we call text-free questions. And we ask three questions. And the first one is, what is your greatest leadership challenge? So it gives you an opportunity to sit back and get real about, of all these things that are challenging you, what is your personal greatest challenge? And then what activities do you need to find extra energy for? Because we're noticing that activities are coming at us at a furious pace, and there are things that aren't getting attention that need greater attention. And we know the opposite is also true. There's things that are getting a lot of attention that aren't really bringing us anywhere. And the third question is related, which is, but more specifically around the quality of attention, not just the time. What activities require better focus to bring out your best as a leader? So I'm at my best as a leader when ...
Mhm. Yeah. So why don't we dig in? There are a few quotes that we've included on the screen here to kind of get us started. These are representative of many comments that we've received in our findings. We just pulled those that are representative of the themes that we're starting to see. So why don't we take them one by one, and then maybe we can each kind of, share our thoughts around why that's happening, and maybe what we can be doing about it. So the first one is that leaders are struggling to provide an inspiring shared vision that move a group of mostly volunteers forward. So that's the word volunteers is an interesting component there, I think, because as I've been teaching a servant leadership course to students, and one of the components one of the things that I've shared with my students is this notion of, think of your employees as volunteers, and would you treat them any differently? And so it looks like this person does work with volunteers, but if we thought of our employees, our direct reports, of volunteers, what does that mean?
I just love that frame of reference, and I think that's
Yeah.
really powerful because we're trying to gain cooperative buy-in. Yes, they get paid and there are job expectations, and we don't diminish any of that, but greater buy-in happens when they want to go in the same direction as the leadership. Another thing I noticed here, and this is really a thank you to the people who took time to take this survey, is they talked about the general principles and their strengths and perhaps their blind spots. So one of the comments in here, and by the way, everything is anonymous here, and I won't be giving anything away, but somebody recognizing that he or she tends to be abstract when describing ideas and situations. And some people respond better to more concrete. And Adrian and I are both predictive index partners. And we say right away that no, that the same message isn't going to meet the people you're working with equally. But just knowing that you have a tendency toward the abstract helps you to adapt to different situations, either by partnering with somebody else that goes from the examples up to the ideas, or by making an effort to do a little bit more to adjust to your audience.
Mhm. Right, it's perhaps pulling in someone on your team that has that strength, right, of providing the detail. You can still provide that abstract, but then give that task to someone who is very equipped at providing the detail to help round out where your strength is. That can sometimes turn into a blind spot, right? And that kind of gets to this next comment about delegation. Delegation being, another struggle. We as leaders can have a hard time handing off tasks or activities to those on our team, or across our teams, so that we're able to do the work that best fits both the role that we're playing and the work that we want to be doing, right? So, Tom, say more about why leaders are finding it hard to delegate. What's behind that?
Well, so one of the things that we teach in SL2, a Blanchard program, is you need to have a delegation strategy with an eye toward development. Sometimes the leader will say, they'll just dump a bunch of stuff and they'll say, "Oh, I'm delegating for your own good." It's like, it doesn't quite feel like that.
All the things you don't want to do.
Right, right. And so we have to ask, like in the strategic networking guide, a few questions. Are we just having a task that needs to be done and anyone can do it? Or is there a strategic reason for having a particular person do this? And if there is, then when I'm spending time helping you to learn it, that's an investment. But over time, I should be uh, less and less involved. And that's a delegation strategy, and it's often missing. And so there's a host of reasons. Some are ego-based. If it's going to be done right around here, it's got to be me. There's a whole host of
Trust.
competing. Excuse me.
Trust. I mean,
Trust, yeah.
you don't trust those that you
Trust the
have available
person.
to delegate to.
And so we could be a broken record and I'm okay. It's not redundancy. Is when we use the word strategy, we are asking the question, what are we counting on to win? And the win should include a win for all the parties involved. And because we're human, it's not going to be perfect, but often we haven't even thought about it
Yeah.
because of these pressures. I just got to get this done. So I give it to Schmedley and then I don't like what Schmedley does. So I take it back. And it just, it
Mhm.
bleeds people energy as well as time.
Yeah. What I love about that is the delegation becomes both a like you said, it's a win for both parties because the delegation of the task becomes that development opportunity, and for the leader, it frees up time, not having to do that task, right? Maybe, but also then provides the opportunity for coaching, which is our third comment. We saw a lot of comments around the energy and the time involved in coaching, and so this is like a win-win. It's a double, 2 for 1 because you're delegating some of the tasks, but also you're providing some coaching.
Yeah, it's an often missed opportunity, isn't it, Adrian?
Yeah, it really is. And underlying everything is trust and communication, right? We know that, we say that all the time, and um, allowing people to make mistakes, right? Being comfortable with people making mistakes. Now, of course, that's within the realm of safely make mistakes. We don't want, to there to be catastrophes out of that, but where can you create that wiggle room so that mistakes can be made and that vulnerability can be shared?
Good
Yeah.
points.
The last one in the green here on this slide is around my favorite topic, change management strategies and writing communications. This is such a misnomer that writing communications or communicating in general is quick. There is nothing quick about a well-written email or a well-written, presentation. Being the one that does that writing on change management efforts for leaders who are trying to get that tone correct, there's so much that goes behind those emails or those communication pieces, those town halls. And for those of us who are good at it, we know that it takes time. And what this comment contributes is that it still always takes more time than I allow myself to spend. And so then something else is having to be given up if you're doing that in the best way possible.
Yeah, and this ties into our strategy for who is right to give that attention and well, and how can we collaborate with others. This really ties into the last one as well. And how critical is perfection in this particular communication? And so if you're involved in rolling out a strategic change initiative, the answer is yes, it needs that time. But then you might have a tendency to do that on a communication that really isn't mission critical.
Mhm.
So we have to always be asking what matters most and who's best to do it, and think short term and long term. So short term might be there's nobody else that's prepared to do this now, and I'm going to put whatever's in it. But if we come to this time next year, I'm going to have a partner.
Mhm. Mhm. And that's a great add is what matters most now, right?
Yes.
Because you don't need to put it all in at one time. Little nuggets is usually the best way, and then that's easier for you to write that well and deliver that well, right? Sometimes it's better just to have the conversation and not have the big profound email, right? Make your way through and have conversations. I could go on and on about change management. So, what other key findings do we have? Is there anything else that's really shouting at us from our early findings, or we can go into the other research that we've recently encountered that
Well,
comes?
I think that's enough of a sample for now, and I just think it's good to talk about what we're going to do with all of this. And that is, first of all, listen. Secondly, look for patterns. And the third thing that we're going to do, and we're already beginning this, is engage. Those of you who listen to our podcast know that we're connected to some real thought leaders, but we're also connected to a lot of people that haven't come on. We're connected to everyone that takes this research, whether we know them personally yet or don't. So what we want to do, in the keeping with a community of conversation, is dive a little more deeply. And if we have resources to bring to a particular pattern, so what patterns are we seeing, we will make sure to bring those resources either digitally or articles or panel discussions. We have a lot of ideas on the table. We can't commit to specifics yet, but we're going to continue to wrestle with these challenges as a community. And that's another place to say, we want your voice in this mix, because everybody has a unique perspective. And what I'm seeing that I really love, and I said it once, but I want to highlight it, is as I glance at these early findings, I'm seeing people really talk about the I and the we. I'm really struggling with this because I tend to be abstract. That was the example I just gave you. A very personal struggle with a leadership. And then also, we're really struggling. I like this one. We're doubling in size and we have to make sure we have the right people. Well, that's not everyone's experience, but there's two things that really cause leadership challenges. One is success, doubling in size, and the other is the opposite of success. Oh my gosh, we're shrinking, and now we really need to make our resources better. Both of them have unique challenges, but some of the same challenges. I don't know if I answered your question, Adrienne, but I think it's important to just underline that we're going to address conversationally whatever comes up and bring our best to these issues.
Yeah. Yeah. This is just the beginning of, us articulating what we're finding. We wanted to kind of jump on and share it with you. It's been about a month or so, I think, that the research has been out. So, what are we finding? And, these are the early days of it. And I expect that we'll hear some compounding of the same messages, but then we'll probably also hear some new themes find their way out as well. And we'll make sure to bring those to you, and then bring some resources to start supporting it. So why don't we have recently encountered the Predictive Index partnered with HR Dive, and they conducted a survey around middle managers. And this is kind of a summary of the findings that have come from that survey. And when I was reviewing the report that we received, what became clear was that a lot of what we're seeing in this report is reflective of what we're seeing in our own resilience research, right? So, I think the point is that this is really starting to be screaming from the mountaintops. We have challenges that we need to deal with, right? This poor guy, right, who is representing a middle manager, but really probably representing a lot of us, right? We're all in a middle manager kind of position in one way, shape, or form, and what hat we wear, where we have people that we are influencing and we have people who we are directing, right? And all of these components coming at this middle manager are reminiscent of what we're seeing in the leadership research as well, the resilience research as well.
Well, what I smile when I look at this graphic, because our research, for those of you who don't know, the activity part of it, we talked about the open text questions, is around productive tension. And when you see all of these competing tensions, you recognize that it's very difficult to address all of them at once. And so it really becomes creating space for what matters most.
Mm,
And all of these are important, so it's not like, and I'm thinking of the serenity prayer, is just to know what matters most and having the courage to do what we can where we are to, and I'll borrow the words down there, to create a path forward. Because this tension is gonna continue. This VUCA reality isn't gonna
mhm,
magically disappear.
mhm,
And I go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, as I was reviewing this report, and this is kind of where this all came from, because I was trying to discern from the report, like, what's the root cause of all of this, right? Like all of the findings, there wasn't a specific finding that led to the next finding, which led to the next finding, which led to the ultimate of we've got disengaged managers who are on the edge of burnout and they can't see a way out, right? And which really is kind of the bottom line, but it's there is no single place where this began, I don't believe, that we could say, well, let's just go back and fix that thing, right? Like all of these 5 or 6 other things can't, it's not fixed, whichever one we perceive to be the first. And now all the others will correct themselves, right? We can't just throw training at our middle managers. We can't just somehow give them more resources so they have more time and all of this magically goes away. We have to pick and address each one of these things in turn. And it's going to take some time, but it will take even longer if we never get started.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and these aren't in priority
Oh,
order, but when you look at the bottom line result of disengaged and on the edge of burnout, and our guest, uh, Brian Sykes, said that now burnout is an official clinical
diagnosable
diagnosis. That
condition.
we've been using the words, it's not a new phenomenon, but just in the healthcare field, it recently became a real thing
Yeah. And hey, does
clinically.
that mean my insurance covers it now?
Well, that seems to be where it's moving, and so it's a very human thing. We have to ask, what is the purpose of our work?
Mhm.
And the word lead means go beyond. So what are we creating? Are we creating something that a next generation is going to want to step into? And then if the answer is no, then it becomes, how can we create this? And I think authentic conversation is a good starting point. Self-awareness is another. Self-leadership is to not require of the people that you're working with something that you would never conceivably put
Mm,
yourself through.
mhm, mhm.
And
I
if
go
there's a
back to communication even. I think it's self-awareness and how many times do managers say something like this? Well, I know I need more people. I know I have too much work. I know I should be putting more time into coaching my team, and I don't have any time for that. And why bother telling my leader? Because it falls on deaf ears, right? So it's a manager's responsibility, I think, to do some of that self-evaluation and gain that awareness. It's also that responsibility to communicate that to someone who will make a
honestly,
change. Honestly,
honestly, I'm reminded of a
constructively,
story.
right?
Yeah, I'm reminded of a story around the turn of the century before the 2011 recession, where an engineer who had a family of small kids, their company said, "We don't want you to take work home. We value family." And they had that value so communicated everywhere. But what they did was they took away some of his staff and they didn't lower any of the standards and said, "Oh, nobody's telling you to bring home work home," but then also implied, we can't get an engineer of your talent and they didn't say this, but it was clearly in the mix. But we could get 3 young people right out of college, and maybe they wouldn't be as good as you, but we could get it done. You could feel that. And meanwhile said, "What are you doing coming in on Sunday? What are you doing bringing work home?" And so that was an extreme example, but I've never really forgotten it.
Yeah.
Is this idea of communication being honest, and so much value communication is not, if you don't walk the walk, you
Hmm.
don't need a framed mission statement on the wall. But
Hmm.
you do speak so loudly, I can't hear what you say is
Hmm.
the mantra around that,
Hmm.
is to realize if you're feeling like that graphic in the middle, you can be sure your colleagues are feeling that way, and you can be sure your supervisor is at least at some level aware of it. And so we have to address that reality.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think we need our highest level leaders, our executives, to be listening, right? To be accepting the information that they're hearing, or don't accept it, but dig in until you've got enough validation that you can accept it, right? Because perhaps, it's true where perhaps there's people are just, oh, they're just complaining, they're tired, or it's, this is just a short-term thing. Push through, push through. How many times do we hear that, right? Well, we can only push through for so long before we crash, right? And so
Well,
we need to be listening.
we do. And so our core value keeps coming up. Our meaning, a leadership beyond, is conversation is the way that we get to the truth, and responding to the conversation, doing what we can with what we have where we are. And we call that talent optimization. And Adrian and I are both committed, and that is simply aligning the business goals and the people strategy to drive results. And you can't have a people strategy if you don't know what they're experiencing and you don't know who they are. So,
Or if they fit, right? It's
where they fit,
uncomfortable.
if they're, yeah.
It's uncomfortable sometimes to realize, it's not easy to think, well, I just had this conversation with someone yesterday. Maybe that person is not well suited for that role. They're an expert at their craft, but not great at relationship building. The 90% of this job is relationship building. Have we thought about this being a mismatch? I mean, and that's a hard conversation, right? We're not saying this person should be fired, but is there another place in the company that that person's strengths are better valued, are more employable, right? And that's hard. That's hard work to find the right fit when you've got a body doing the work, right? So we've got to pay attention.
We
This
do.
is not going to go away.
And we are committed to bringing you as much as we can to help address it. And we're also counting on you to bring your experience to the table so that we can all work together to cultivate a leadership beyond.
Yeah, that would be great, right? Coming together, and what things did you do that worked, that did start making a difference? Is it a magic pill? Nope. We're not expecting there to be any magic pill. But how are you chipping away at some of these things? If maybe you look at this and you feel like, no, my team is in great shape. What are you doing then? Let's talk, right? Because we can share that with others, and then all these other middle managers can feel good. Yeah,
That's
wonderful.
inspiring, Adrian.
We look forward to having so many more conversations, right? I think we're just kind of at the tip of this iceberg, which, I mean, has been an iceberg that's been that's been building, but maybe we're finally starting to put some fine points and attention on these things, and we can get together and together figure out, what do we do about all this?
Thank you for being part of this community of conversation.
we look forward to talking again. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Beyond podcast. We hope you benefited from this conversation as much as we have. We invite you to join our community of conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to sign up at aleadershipbeyond.com for free materials and updates. That's aleadershipbeyond.com. Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.